Part 42. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 411. Chapter 411 Xia Yu's Visit. At the beginning, Xiaoling and Xia Yu were both orphans. After being adopted by Pei Xian, Xiaoling said that she would have her birthday on the anniversary of her adoption, and Xia Yu also followed Feng and wanted to go with her. Therefore, the birthdays of both sisters were set on this day. In the past many years, the three of them often celebrated this anniversary together. Sometimes, Pei Xian would be impatient and coax Xiaoling into spending a day in advance, or he would accompany the two sisters at noon, and then have a solo show for Xiaoling in the evening. Until Xiaoling passed away. On this day last year, Xia Yu knocked on his door while drunk, cried and threw herself into his arms, saying she missed her sister. That night, she wore her sister's favorite dress and her sister's favorite jewelry. She looked like pear blossoms with rain. In a trance, it was like his little Ling came to life again. He drank wine with her and smelled the familiar scent of perfume on her body. He almost recognized the wrong person and couldn't control himself. He still regrets it. If something really happened that night, how should he face Xiaoling? Xia Yu is different from other women. She is Xiaoling's most beloved sister and the person he can never touch. Now, when he heard that Xia Yu was coming again, he frowned imperceptibly. You go and accompany her. Xiaoling's voice contained a hint of weariness. I'm going to sleep. Don't tell her who you are, Pei Xian asked. Xiaoling shook her head. It's been 2 lifetimes, what's the point of saying it? Pei Xian also thought about it. The fewer people who know about Xiaoling's rebirth, the better. Even close relatives don't need to tell them. What's more, they have had so many quarrels and had so many unpleasant experiences in their lives. Who knows what will happen after they meet each other? Just let Xiao live in the dream of sisterly harmony forever, that's fine. Pei Xian said, you go to sleep first, I will come up in a while. Xiaoling felt hungry again. I want a midnight snack. What do you want to eat? He asked warmly. Sauerkraut fish, she said. Since becoming pregnant, many dishes that I don't usually eat have unexpectedly tasted delicious. Pei Xian nodded and told Zhou Ma to do it. Zhou's mother heard their conversation from the side and sighed in her heart that Miss Ye really knew the general situation and did not embarrass her husband because of Miss Xiaoling and Miss Xia Yu's affairs, and her favorability towards her increased a lot. In addition, I was very happy to take care of pregnant women, so I immediately agreed with a smile on my face and turned to go to the kitchen to get busy. Pei Xian put a coat on her, kissed her forehead again, and then left. In the living room, Xia Yu was indeed waiting. Tonight, she wore the same bright makeup as her sister did when she was alive. She was exquisite and had a hint of charm, which made people's hearts flutter. The dress she was wearing was also my sister's favorite, an elegant hand-embroidered silk satin, with diamond earrings and necklace. Even the perfume is the brand my sister is used to. Last year, Pei Xian didn't feel anything when she dressed like this, but now, he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. His Xiaoling is unique, how can it be tolerated by others' poor imitation? Brother Xian seeing him, Xia Yu smiled sweetly and stepped forward to greet him. Why are you dressed like this? He asked in a deep voice. Xia Yu was startled and suddenly felt aggrieved. Didn't he say nothing when she was dressed like this last year? What happened this year? Had his thoughts really shifted to that named Yexin Ling, so that he had even forgotten all the feelings he had in the past? She was about to cry, her eyes red. My sister is gone, and I want her to celebrate her birthday with us, so. She lowered her head, revealing a small part of her delicate neck. I dressed up like my sister, just it seems like my sister is still with us. Brother Xian, if you don't want to, I'll change my clothes. No need, Pei Xian said. She didn't know that the sister she longed for was in the bedroom upstairs. She was too lazy to come down to see her because she was sleepy due to pregnancy. Since she was so sincere about her sister, let her go, so as not to waste time changing clothes back and forth. Now Peizian just wants to spend the anniversary with her as soon as possible and go back upstairs to see Xiaoling. Xiaoyu burst into tears and smiled, I know that brother Ziheng loves me the most. She took out a large box of birthday cakes, I made this by myself, brother Ziheng, do you want to try it? Peizian followed her and put the birthday cake into the restaurant. As soon as he entered the restaurant, Xiaoyu's expression felt a little wrong. Didn't brother Ziheng live alone? Why are there two pairs of bowls and chopsticks placed on the table, and there is a soft pillow on one of the chairs, with light pink bunny ears, which looks like something used by women? No, that's not her sister's old thing. Xiaoyu is as familiar with this villa as if it were her own home. She also knows her sister's old things very well. This rabbit ear pillow looks like a new one at first glance, and the small floral porcelain cup next to it is also very suspicious. Is there a woman living in Ziheng's brother's house? Xiaoyu's heart skipped a beat, and the alarm bell rang loudly. In the past 2 years, many women, including herself, wanted to live in this villa, but they were all ruthlessly rejected by Ziheng's brother. In fact, whenever a woman asked to come here out of the blue, she would be thrown into the cold palace by brother Zion without exception. So, who can break through the limits of brother Ziheng and win this honor? Xiaoyu was extremely jealous. She gritted her teeth secretly, but her smile became sweeter, and she and Peizian cut the cake together. The cream cake as white as snow is paired with bright red strawberries, and the aroma of honey is intoxicating in the air. Xiaoyu put the cake on a delicate floral porcelain plate, inserted mint leaves for decoration, and handed it to Peizian. Brother Zion, are these dishes newly bought? They are so beautiful, she asked casually. Yeah, he responded simply, remembering that Xiaoling insisted on changing all the utensils in the house into pink and fresh style, saying that she liked it. He knew her little thoughts and wanted to have a daughter, and thought that he would get his wish by looking at these little girl things every day. He was so naive and cute. As he thought about it, a soft smile appeared in his eyes. Xiaoyu was now completely convinced that someone lived here, and it was Yexin Ling, right? Only that dared to make demands without restraint, not even sparing her sister's things. Xiaoyu was so angry that her hands holding the porcelain plate tightened. The sound of footsteps was heard on the stairs. Xiaoyu looked up and saw a pretty girl wearing a floor-length nightgown, rubbing her eyes and lazily appearing at the top of the stairs. The girl didn't seem surprised to see Xiaoyu. She only glanced at her casually and then concentrated on walking up the stairs. It is Yexin Ling. Peizian also heard the noise behind him, turned around and saw her. Be careful, he put down the cake plate in his hand, walked up the stairs quickly, and supported her. Why did you come down while wearing this? What if you fall? End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 412. Chapter 412 is intentional. That nightgown is a bit long, but it is already the most conservative style among all her robes. Xiaoling is now pregnant and can no longer wear those split pajamas and pajamas. She is afraid of strangling the baby in her belly, so she has no choice but to choose such a pajamas. Too lazy to change, she said lazily. Although he was supporting her, she still focused on looking at the road under her feet and whispered, why is it so difficult to walk up the staircase? Peizian couldn't laugh or cry. She found it hard to leave now. Who decorated the house in the first place? Who doesn't allow him to express opinions? He really wanted to remind her of those past events, but considering that Xiaoyu was still around, he had no choice but to give up. Xiaoyu was shocked in her heart. God, was she right? Brother Zion was helping a woman carefully walk up the stairs with his own hands. This was treatment that none of her sisters had received back then. Xiaoyu stared blankly, feeling sour and bitter in her heart. She didn't even notice that the strawberry cake in her hand had overturned. Finally, Pei Ziyan helped Xiaoling go downstairs slowly. Xiaoling looked up and saw Xiaoyu staring at her with a pair of delicate and sinister eyes, saying, "My sister designed and built this staircase. Who do you have the right to criticize it?" Xiao Pei Ziyan frowned. Xiaoling looked at the good sister in front of her and slowly smiled. "I just said that the stairs are not easy to walk, do you care? I live here now, Miss Xiaoyu, not you with a conscience." She didn't mean to provoke Xiaoyu, but someone came to her door to find trouble. She has no good temper and patience. "Why do you live in my sister's house?" Xiaoyu was so angry that she couldn't even speak. She turned to Pei Ziyan, "Brother Ziyan, you just let other women ruin your sister's things like this. Xiaoling is just like your sister." With one sentence, Xiaoyu was stunned. What kind of ecstasy soup did this woman pour into Brother Ziyan so that she could be on an equal footing with her sister? She doesn't deserve it. Looking at Pei Ziyan's hand on Xiaoling's waist, Xiaoyu had an unprecedented sense of crisis. In the past, no matter how many women Ziyan raised outside, he would never bring them home. Those women were just substitutes for his sisters. Just to relieve my thoughts. However, the substitute in front of her is different. She may truly replace her sister as the hostess of this room. "Brother Ziyan, don't you want your sister anymore?" Xia Yuxuan was about to cry. Xiaoling looked at her tearful performance and silently awarded her the Best Actress award in her heart. She yawned boredly and said, "You guys talk." She gently broke away from Pei Ziyan's hand and asked, "Go forward." Pei Ziyan grabbed her, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to the kitchen to see Mother Zhou." After how long, she became restless and couldn't help but come down to take a look. The kitchen is not far from the dining room. Zhou Ma heard the noise and had already walked out. "Ms. Yeah, this dish of pickled fish takes a lot of effort, and I have to make you wait. Why don't I make you something else first?" Pei Ziyan took Xiaoling to the dining table and sat down. "By chance, Xiao brought cakes. You can eat some first." "I." Xiaoling looked at the richly sweet cake on the table and said she didn't want to eat it. Xiaoyu cried out as if she had been wronged, "Why do you want to give her the cake I made?" "Brother Ziyan, this cake is to commemorate my sister, to commemorate the 18th anniversary of the three of us knowing each other." As he said, he gave Xiaoling a demonstrative look. Xiaoling wanted to tell her that "I am your sister," but she held back the words. She hated seeing others yelling in front of her, so she became competitive again, so she reached out and grabbed a piece of cake. "You are not allowed to eat," Xiaoyu cried. Xiaoling looked at the small piece of cake in her hand. I have to admit that Xiaoyu's craftsmanship is pretty good. The snow-white cream has a mellow and attractive aroma. The strawberries and mint are bright in color and exude a fresh smell. She was very hungry, and every cell in her body was clamoring to eat, eat, eat. Without thinking too much, she approached the piece of cake and took a bite. However, in the next moment, he vomited it all out with a wow sound. "Xiaoling," Pei Ziyan quickly handed her the water glass, feeling relieved. "You," Xiaoyu really cried this time, "this bitch, ruining her cake like this. Do you know how much thought she put into making this cake? I started researching it several months in advance, and even learned from a famous pastry chef. I beat eggs and made dough by myself. I didn't know how many test products were broken, and even the skin on my hands was roughened, and I finally succeeded. Make such a sweet and delicious cake." Today, she woke up very early and worked hard all day to make the cake. She also dressed herself up carefully and delivered it to her door. She wanted to surprise brother Zi Hung and spend a good night with him. To ruin this bitch. Don't go too far, her tears flowed out. Even when she cried, she looked so beautiful and pitiful. Yasin Ling, just say it when you despise what I made. Why do you have to take a bite and then spit it out? No, you are so humiliating. Xiaoling didn't have the energy to comfort her at all. I feel like my stomach is churning and I feel like vomiting. However, she can't vomit. What if she keeps vomiting like this and the baby's nutrition cannot keep up? It took a lot of perseverance for her to endure the uncomfortable feeling, and she breathed calmly, lying on the dining table and panting. Pei Ziyan, on the other hand, glanced at Xiaoyu and said solemnly, "Don't disturb Xiaoling." He knew she had morning sickness and was extremely worried, but Xiaoyu was still making noise next to her. At this moment, Pei Ziyan suddenly felt that Xiaoling's sister was taking him too seriously. Xiaoyu also noticed that something was wrong with his expression, and hurriedly stopped talking, choking. Brother Ziheng is a very domineering person. He says that as long as it is something he believes in, even if the King of Heaven comes, he will not be able to pull it back. Now, he is obviously partial to that bitch. Even if he continues to make noise, it will only make him more disgusted. Xiaoyu's heart was about to break. She lowered her head, not looking at his concern for Xiaoling, and just shed tears one by one. Pei Ziyan took care of Xiaoling for a long time. When he saw that she was fine, he remembered that there was a girl next to him. Looking at the sad look on the face that resembled Xiaoling's in her previous life, he felt a little unbearable and said, "Xiaoling didn't mean to throw up your cake. She hasn't been feeling well lately. She's pregnant. I just threw up on purpose." Suddenly, Xiaoling interrupted him. Pei Ziyan was a little surprised and turned to look at her. Why was Xiaoling so aggressive at this time? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 413. Chapter 413 Whistle Blowing. Her eyes were as clear as the stars in the night sky. She looked at Xiaoyu intently, and the corners of her lips curved into a smile that was not a smile. "Xiaoyu, don't you think the food you make tastes terrible? Cream. Too much, too little sugar, and the proportion of water is wrong. Are the mint and strawberries just bought at random? The taste is just like expired discounted goods. Xiaoyu, how dare you give it to others with such craftsmanship?" I don't blame her for being picky. She is used to eating cakes made by Lilei himself, so she naturally feels that the quality of the chefs outside is unpalatable. Besides, she interrupted Pei Ziyan on purpose because she didn't want Xiaoyu to know that she was pregnant. This baby was not easy to come by. Now, the fetus is not yet firmly seated. Why tell a woman with whom he is incompatible and cause trouble? Xiaoling pushed the dinner plate and looked at Pei Ziyan. "I just caught a cold. Is it worth your fuss and explanation?" Pei Ziyan is such a shrewd person. Seeing her like this, he knew in his heart that he didn't want him to tell about the pregnancy. So, he also changed the subject cooperatively. "Isn't it delicious? I'll find someone else to cook it for you tomorrow." His voice was low and he looked at her tenderly, like a good husband doting on his wife. The lights in the restaurant were quiet. Xiaoyu looked at the beautiful couple in front of her, shook her head in disbelief, and backed away. "Brother Ziyan, you don't love your sister anymore." The tears couldn't stop falling. Xiaoling looked up at her, looking at her outstanding acting skills, with mixed feelings in her heart. She kept reminding herself, "Xiaoling, have you forgotten what Xiaoyu did to you?" Those vicious insults and curses were all said by her in a twisted way, smiling happily in front of you. "Xiaoling, don't be soft-hearted." However, he said, "Xiaoyu, why are you bothering? Maybe your sister doesn't care whether Pei Ziyan loves her anymore, so why do you have to worry about her for her? Forget her and live a good life." Xiaoyu thought she was being sarcastic. Shaking his head, he stepped back step by step, cried, covered his face and rushed out the door. In the restaurant, it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Pei Ziyan reached out and gently lifted Xiaoling's chin. There was no emotion in his voice. "You don't care if I love you anymore, huh?" But she just looked at him a little tiredly. "Pei Ziyan, my people are already by your side. Life or death in this life is all up to you. What else do you want to ask of me?" She waved away gently his hand. "Be content and don't drive us all to a dead end." She stood up and left, leaving him with a solemn silhouette. In the kitchen, the aroma of pickled fish wafts out, mixed with the sweet aroma of cakes on the table, and it is full of the atmosphere of a peaceful home. However, the day her heart is not here, the house will become colder. Xiaoling talked about Xiaoyu when she went to have tea with Feng Kun. "It's so strange. She is obviously a top student who graduated from Cambridge and is very talented in business management. Why did she sharpen her head to become a singer? And she is also busy washing her hands and making soup." She lazily lay at the small bar by the window to bask in the sun. The sun was shining on the front and side. "No matter how obsessed with Pei Ziyan I have been chasing him for so many years and haven't caught him, so it's time to give up." Feng Kun paused slightly as he prepared her juice. "I originally thought that you didn't know that Xiaoyu likes Pei Ziyan." "I didn't know before," Xiaoling smiled bitterly. "Now that I know, I really want to persuade Pei Ziyan to take her in, let her become his wife as she wishes, and let me go at the same time." She fell silent. Feng Kun was also silent and handed her the special juice in his hand. Xiaoling drank in small sips. On his wrist, the diamond bracelet Pei Ziyan gave him last night shone brightly. She glanced at it casually, took it off, took out a small sycamore wood amulet from her handbag, and wrapped the long red thread around her wrist. The clear sunlight contrasted with her almost translucent white skin, complementing the somewhat eerie red color. She looked at it carefully, in a daze. It would be great if Lilei were here. He would definitely make the most delicious cake for her to eat. With his unique craftsmanship, she would not have such severe morning sickness, and the baby would be healthy. No need, she was terrified every day. Lilei. Missing spreads. This is what Xiaoyu saw when she passed by the bar. That named Ling looked at her wrist in fascination. On her wrist was a small amulet wrapped with red silk thread. Her eyes were soft, filled with deep longing and sadness, as if she were looking at her long-lost lover. With a woman's instinct, Xiaoyu immediately realized that something was wrong. She was at Brother Zi Hung's house last night and paid special attention to the interaction between this and Brother Zi Hung. When she looked at Brother Zi Hung, Ling didn't look like this. Could it be that Ling has something else in mind? Xiaoyu was startled by her thoughts. Unexpectedly, she thought of Yesingling's previous scandal with Tianyi's boss Lilei. Could it be that the two of them had not broken up yet? As excited as if he had discovered a new world, Xiaoyu looked in the direction of the bar and smiled viciously. "Huh, bitch, so what if you are temporarily favored? I thought I fed the cake last night to the dog. I will soon reveal your true nature as a licentious person. When the time comes, it will be up to you whether Brother Zion still wants you." She wants to drive Ling away so that Brother Zion belongs to her alone. She passed the bar counter like a weak willow supporting the wind, walked all the way towards the headquarters building, and entered the chairman's office. Pei Ziyan was reading the report inside. When he saw it was her, he asked, "Is something wrong?" "Brother Zion," Xiaoyu bit her lip and lowered her head, I'm here to apologize to you for what happened yesterday. It was my fault yesterday. I didn't know that Ling was not feeling well, and besides, I'm anxious to defend my sister, otherwise I wouldn't yell at her." "It doesn't matter," Pei Ziyan said warmly, "I'm very happy that you have such feelings for your sister. It turns out that there is still a place for his sister in his heart." Xiaoyu's originally uneasy heart fell to the ground again. As long as Zi Hung's brother cared about his sister, Her status as a younger sister could be preserved, and she could continue to get close to him for this reason and find ways to make him fall in love with her. Sayura said weakly, "I miss my sister so much. I was at the recording studio just now. When I passed by the small bar, I saw Yasin Ling. I guess she loves you too, brother Zion, that's why she looked so longing for the token you gave her. It was her eyes that touched me and made me feel that I couldn't be so selfish, so I came to apologize to you." Pei Zion's expression also softened. She likes that diamond bracelet very much. What diamond bracelet? Xiaoyu opened her eyes slightly, showing a surprised look. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 414. Chapter 414 Too ostentatious. Pei Zion was also slightly startled and looked at her inquiringly. What is the token you are talking about? It's an amulet, Xiaoyu said softly, wrapped with red silk thread. Yasin Ling put it on her wrist and looked at it tenderly. The red thread hasn't always been a token of love between lovers. So, isn't it? I thought it was from you, brother Zion. She seemed to hesitate. Brother Zion, I didn't see any diamond bracelet. She wasn't wearing it. Maybe I was far away and saw it wrong. It would be outrageous to mistake a diamond bracelet for an amulet wrapped in red thread. Pei Zion was silent for a moment and waved his hand. I still have business to attend to, he said. I understand your apology. Let's go out first. Xiaoyu knew her plan had succeeded, smiled silently, and retreated. At night, Pei Zion went home as usual, and when he had dinner with Xiaoling, he saw that her wrists were empty. Where's the bracelet? He asked. Xiaoling was startled for a moment and looked down at her wrist. It's too ostentatious, so I put it away. In fact, she forgot to put the bracelet back on after taking off the amulet. However, it is true to say that it is ostentatious. When she handed something to the staff this morning, the other person looked at her wrist and his eyes went straight. Why didn't I find you dissatisfied with diamonds in my previous life? Pei Zion said warmly. Xiaoling glanced at him. Can it be the same? In her previous life, she was so domineering that she didn't even know how to write the word swagger, lest the whole world didn't know how much he loved her. But what about this life? She just wants to live a low-key life and give birth to the baby in her belly safely and raise it. Her life has been ruined after being separated from Lilei, and it has been gloomy since then. Only the baby in her belly is the ray of light in this gloom, and she will live for her baby for the rest of her life. As for herself, why bother arousing envy, jealousy, and hatred anymore? She lowered her head to drink the soup without making a sound. Pei Zion made a decision. Tomorrow I will send someone a few product catalogs. You can look at them and pick out the ones you like. There are many low-key and beautiful jewelry in the world, and he also has the patience to coax her slowly. But some things cannot be kept. After dinner, Xiaoling went to bed as usual. Pei Zion was busy in the study for a long time before he opened the bedroom door, took off his clothes and got into bed, hugging her from behind and falling asleep. Xiaoling didn't sleep well tonight. As soon as he came up, she woke up, but didn't move, letting his even and long breaths caress her hair. I don't know why, but I always feel a little uneasy inside. The moon is at the top of the sky, shining in through the gauze curtains of the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the beauty is like water. On the contrary, she became more and more awake, and she was suffering from insomnia. She simply stood up carefully from Pei Zion's arms without waking him, tiptoed off the bed, and walked barefoot out of the bedroom. Perhaps it was easier to miss someone in the dead of night. Her mind was filled with Lilei's bright and handsome smiling face. Unknowingly, she walked to her own small workshop, where there was a small and exquisite handbag. The one she usually carries with her when going out. She opened her handbag and touched the amulet out of habit. Unexpectedly, I got nothing. Where's the amulet? She broke out in a cold sweat. She touched it again, but there was still nothing. She couldn't help but pour out everything in the bag, but inside there was only the gorgeous and cold diamond bracelet that Peizian gave her, and the amulet that Lilei spent half his blood to pray for her had long since disappeared. She became anxious and searched the whole room, but still couldn't find it. She felt her head was buzzing, and the unprecedented anxiety made her panic. She walked downstairs in 3 steps at a time, rushed out of the hall door, and groped her way to the garage. In the garage, there are 3 Rolls-Royces parked side by side. Xiaoling found the car she was riding in today. She didn't have the key, so she had to stick to the car window and look in desperately. The siren was so loud that she couldn't care less. After a while, the security guard and the driver came over and saw her. "Miss Ye, why are you here so late?" She turned her head and glanced at the driver. "Open the door and let me take a look. I forgot something in the back seat." The driver opened it as instructed. Xiaolingze searched carefully but couldn't find the amulet. She hesitated for a moment, then turned around and asked the driver, "Has anything been left on the back seat before? For example, a piece of amulet, made of sycamore wood with red thread." So big as she spoke, she gestured with her hands. The driver said, "I haven't seen it before." Seeing her anxious look, he added, "There are some blankets and pillows in the car, which need to be cleaned every day. Could the thing you are looking for be mixed with them? Do you want if you don't go to the laundry room and take a look? Those blankets must have been taken there by Joe's mother." Xiaoling went straight to the laundry room before he could finish his words. The laundry room was at a corner of the garden, far away from the garage. She traveled through most of the house before finally getting there. She prayed silently in her heart, hoping that the amulet was still there. Recently, she had a severe reaction during pregnancy and she was very lazy. In the evening, she was so confused that she couldn't remember whether the zipper of her bag was zipped. She hoped that it really fell. In the car, it was mixed with the blankets so that she could still find it. Thank God, there are not many things to be washed in the laundry room. There are only a suit jacket from Peizian and a few dresses from her, as well as the blankets and pillows taken from the Rolls-Royce today. Xiaoling eagerly turned through every piece of fabric. However, to her disappointment, there was no amulet anywhere. That small piece of sycamore wood seemed to have disappeared out of thin air, silently and missing. Her heart felt cold and her body was numb. She looked through all the fabrics carefully in disbelief, but there was still nothing. After being stunned for a moment, she turned on all the lights in the laundry room with trembling hands and searched every corner carefully. Maybe she had dropped it somewhere, and she must find it. Lilei has disappeared from her life, and that amulet is her only thought and sustenance. Washing machines, dryers, tubs, drain pipes. She turned over little by little, using too much force, hurting her nails and turning her skin. However, she had no time to care. She only had one belief in her heart: she must find it, and she would never give up until she found it. The entire laundry room was turned upside down by her, like a passing typhoon. She stood in the middle of this mess, and the desolation in her heart was even worse than the scene in front of her. "Amulet, where are you?" Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a faint dark red. Xiaoling turned around in surprise, but saw nothing. But she refused to give up, refused to believe that the small patch of dark red just now was just her illusion, and hurriedly looked in that direction. There was the dirty and dim drain of the laundry room, separated by the rusty iron fence. It was dark inside and nothing could be seen. The author, IQ, is in arrears. I posted the last chapter twice. In order not to waste everyone's book money, I urgently replaced the repeated chapters with new content. However, the chapter name cannot be modified, it can only be the same as the previous chapter but the content is different. P.S. This chapter will be published at 12 o'clock tomorrow. It will be posted now. It will not be published at 12 o'clock tomorrow. The next update will be at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, okay? I haven't done any updates recently because I'm under too much pressure to catch up on the manuscript. Wait until I update on the 16th and I'll make a big move. Be good. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xiaoweiniang. Chapter 415. Chapter 415, Take good care of your grandson. She didn't care that the nightgown she was wearing was new. She knelt down and reached out to fumble for it. She fumbled several times but found nothing. She couldn't believe it. She just saw a dark red. It couldn't be an illusion. It couldn't be. She simply lay down, stretched her arms to the limit, and kept trying. The cold sewage flowed along her nightgown and soaked her hands and legs. Her body felt uncomfortable, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. Once again there will definitely be. But still didn't touch anything. Behind him, a deep male voice sounded, "What are you looking for?" She was startled, turned around, and saw a tall man standing in the shadow of the moonlight, wearing a dark black satin nightgown, as if he was blending into the darkness. The light and shadow on the man's face were uncertain, making his expression also cloudy and unpredictable. He just looked at Xiaoling quietly, with unpredictable mood and anger. "This is Pei Xian. When did he wake up?" Xiaoling's heart beat rapidly, and she felt panicked and embarrassed as if she had been caught doing something wrong. However, in just a moment, she suddenly realized, Pei Xian, it's Pei Xian. It must be him who hid the sycamore wood amulet. "Where did you put my things?" she asked. Pei Xian looked unmoved. "What is it?" "Don't act stupid," she said angrily, "give me back the amulet." She looked up at him with her little face raised, her eyes were clear, shining with faint starlight, beautiful and fragile. Pei Xian's heart moved slightly. He wanted to hold such a petite and restless woman in his arms and cherish her, but he held back. His woman can be willful, but being too willful is never a good thing. She should learn some rules. "Don't pretend to be stupid," he said in a low voice, "I've told you before that there are some things you shouldn't keep." Xiaoling took a breath and turned slightly pale. She thought of the fate of the platinum ring pendant with Li Lei's surname engraved on it, and asked in a trembling voice, Could you destroy that amulet too?" "Oh my God, that piece of sycamore wood was the result of Li Lei's long head and she had to shed half her body's blood to get it. It was many times more precious than a platinum ring. If it was really destroyed, she couldn't imagine it." Pei Xian's voice was very calm, "I'll keep it for you. It is said that if an amulet is destroyed, it will be unlucky for the owner. If not for this reason, he would have burned the inconspicuous wooden sign. But you never want to see it again in this life, Xiaoling, just give birth to and raise my child honestly. Fortunately, it's not ruined yet." Xiaoling breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't hear the second half of his words. She only said, "Give it back to me." Pei Xian said, "Go back to your room and sleep now. Give me back." His face was as cold as a knife, with a slight frown between his brows. Without any warning, he picked her up and strode to the bedroom. Xiaoling was caught off guard and screamed, kicking and beating him with her hands and feet, but it was useless. The tall man was determined to make her obey his will, and walked all the way through the garden and corridor of the lonely villa back to the bedroom. "Put her back to bed." "Sleep," he uttered one word coldly. "Xiaoling still wants to make trouble again." He said, "Believe it or not, I destroyed that piece of wood." Her body trembled and she became quiet. "It has always been like this. The man in front of me uses strong methods to suppress everything. He is domineering, arrogant, unreasonable, and failure to surrender will lead to destruction." Xiaoling looked at him, all the grievances she had felt in her 2 lifetimes came to her heart, and her eye circles gradually turned red. Pei Xian looked at her weeping look, and his heart hurt like needles. However, when he thought that her tears were shed for another man, his expression became colder. "Sleep quietly and don't let me see you running around again, otherwise, I will lock the door." She was afraid and kept silent. In his last life, he also locked her up and humiliated her in every possible way, so that even now, being locked up and imprisoned is the nightmare she least wants to face. She curled up and forced herself to close her eyes. Pei Zion sat by the bed and looked at her for a while, then got up, closed the door, and went to the study. He didn't wake up suddenly, he was woken up by an emergency call. When he woke up, he found that she was not there. He did not deal with the matter on the phone immediately, but went to search the huge villa to find her. He was worried that something might happen to her. This kind of worry comes before official duties. The stars and the moon are dim. He walked into the study room and opened the video communication. At the other end of the video, it was a bright afternoon in New York, USA, and the Emperor's staff were busy with anxious expressions. "Chairman, from the time you received our call to now, our stock price has dropped another 4%. Pei Zion's expression became solemn. "Who did it?" "He is from the Li family." On the other end of the video, the clerk was very efficient and had already found out who was deliberately suppressing the Emperor's stock price. It is said that he was ordered by the second young master. The second young master, Li Lei. Pei Zion has always been in charge of the city, and he has already understood what is going on. That man cannot take Xiaoling away directly, so he uses this method to retaliate. He said, "Give me a call from Li Lei." The call was answered quickly. "What do you want?" Pei Zion asked coldly. On the other end of the phone, Li Lei looked at the falling stock price of Pei's on the electronic board. There was no emotion in his voice. "I want Xiaoling, please let her go." Dream. Having said that, there was nothing more to talk about. Pei Zion hung up the phone and started a fierce fight with the Li family in the stock market. Orders were issued one after another. However, the strong and efficient orders in the past had little effect in this situation. The Li family was naturally strong in the overseas capital market, and Li Lei was obviously prepared and had mobilized sufficient funds. With his own hands, Pei Zion was caught off guard and retreated steadily. "Chairman, this can't go on like this." The executive in charge of us stocks was so anxious that sweat broke out on his forehead. Pei Zion looked at his watch, and his voice was as calm as a mountain. "You can hold on for another half hour." He dialed another number, passed through many transfers, and entered the Yangzing garden at the Li family headquarters. Li Shanhe, he was not polite to the old man of the Li family, and his voice was so cold that it could drop ice shards. "If you are too old to control your grandson, I can discipline it for you after that." He hung up the phone. Mr. Li, who was dug out of his sleep, stared at the phone in confusion for a long time before he realized what he was doing and said to the servant waiting on the side, "Go. Check for me, what good things did that brat Li Lei do?" That was the call from Chairman Emperor, coming from China. The old man thought with his toes and knew that it was Li Lei who had caused the trouble. As for Li Feng, with Li Feng's temperament of killing, silencing, and torturing people, how could he provoke the giants in the Bideo business world and still get people to call and complain alive? Since Li Lei is really the male lead, and Pei Dada is the second male lead. Second male. What, you ask me? It's Dada Pei who has been appearing for Mao recently, because Daddy Li is still trying to find a way to collect the ransom money for his wife and children. 233,333. It will probably be a long time before Xiaoling and Daddy Li are reunited. Before that, everyone should take good care of Pei Dada. One less glance. Cherish what you have at the moment. Ahem. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 416. Chapter 416 New Love and Old Love. The subordinates quickly went to investigate and told Mr. Li what happened in the stock market. Mr. Li was so angry that he puffed his beard and glared, "This kid has rebelled. Why fight with the emperor's chairman over a stinky girl? You all indulge him one by one. No one is there for him to use funds from the stock market. Tell me." The subordinates were scolded so much that they lowered their heads and did not dare to speak. But he was slandering in his heart, old man, who doesn't know that Master Lei is your darling?" Not to mention that he mobilized a small amount of funds in the stock market. Even if he invested funds from several large bases in Southeast Asia and South Africa, and all of them were in vain, you don't necessarily think you would say a harsh word about him. Perhaps it's our fault that the person who complained is so troubled. The men were in tears. What happened to the old man today? However, no matter what kind of wind the old man is having, since he is angry, they have the responsibility to help him extinguish the anger. Immediately, everyone said that Master Lei had gone too far. How could Master Lei be so ignorant and misuse the family's funds? Freeze everything, and let the young people play. Soon, the funds belonging to the Li family headquarters in the stock market withdrew from this war. China, Tianyi Building, Office. Boss, Tanying walked up to Li Lei. The old man responded very quickly and has temporarily frozen your authority to mobilize funds from the Li family headquarters. Li Lei raised his eyebrows slightly. Is someone complaining? He knew his grandfather's routine very well. He was probably sleeping at this time. Who had the ability and dignity to wake him up from his sleep? Pei Ziyan. Tanying announced the name. Li Lei sneered, he does know how to draw money from the bottom of the pot. After all, Tianyi has only been established for a few years, and other industries under Li Lei's name are also still very young, and they are not enough to snipe the emperor in the stock market. However, it is different to stake the entire Li family's funds. The huge cash flow is enough to scare any giant crocodile. Tanying also felt it was a pity. In 2 more hours, the emperor can be seriously injured. Forget it, the harvest has been pretty good. Li Lei stood up. Really, although he was using funds from the headquarters, it was obviously to make money for the headquarters, and his grandfather also wanted to stop it. The only possibility is that Grandpa knows that he did this for Xiaoling. It seems that Grandpa still has a deep prejudice against Xiaoling. There is such an old man inside, and there is a powerful enemy like Pei Ziyan outside. Li Lei's expression was solemn. How could he get Xiaoling back to him? Follow me to the emperor tomorrow, he told Tanying. The next day, Xiaoling did not sleep well at night. She dreamed that she was looking for the amulet. She searched for countless years and countless time and space, but still found nothing. When she woke up from the dream, the feeling of sadness and anxiety was still so real, making her uneasy and unsettled. She put on her clothes and went downstairs and asked Zhou's mother, "Where is Pei Ziyan?" Zhou's mother said, "Sir, he stayed up all night in the study. It seems something urgent happened at the company. This morning, he didn't even have time to eat, so he hurried to the company." Xiaoling just said "oh" lightly. She didn't care what happened to the emperor. Anyway, with Pei Ziyan's methods, there was no time when he couldn't handle it. All she cared about was when she could see him. No matter how hard he was, or whether he was stalking him, she was still "I want to get that amulet back." She had a few bites of breakfast and went to the emperor. Still got out of the black Rolls-Royce and walked into the company building under the gaze of everyone. Nowadays, she has become very accustomed to everyone in the company paying attention to her, and she even knew that someone was secretly betting on when she would be abandoned by Pei Ziyan. She doesn't care. Her manager Chu Chen accompanied her towards the recording studio. Xiaoling said, "I want to go to the chairman's office." Chu Chen was slightly startled. "The chairman is in a meeting now, how about I make an appointment for you?" "Reserve." When does she need to make an appointment to see Pei Zion? Xiaoling ignored Chu Chen and walked forward. She almost bumped into someone at the corner. She subconsciously covered her lower abdomen. Fortunately, she didn't hit her. The baby in her belly was safe. It's just that she was frightened. Will it have any bad effects on the baby? Thinking like this, his mood became a little bad. When he raised his head and saw the person in front of him, his mood became even worse. It turned out to be Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu was also startled by her sudden appearance. She held her arms and screamed first, "Oh, it hurts." Xingling, why are you walking? Didn't you see anyone? Ranruo looked accusatory. It seemed like she had suffered a great injustice. Xiaoling's mood became even worse, and she said coldly, "Why are you pretending? It's obvious that they didn't bump into each other, okay?" "You actually said I was faking." Xiaoyu was so aggrieved that she was about to cry, but the volume was not too low, so that everyone walking nearby could hear. "Xingling, you hit me and I don't admit it, but you slapped me on the back. Are you saying I'm pretending?" There are already a lot of curious eyes looking over. Tisk, the chairman's old love sister and his new love are in conflict again. This scene is simply better than the entertainment industry's war. They all count on this for gossip at lunch every day. Everyone's eyes were shining, and they all pretended to be casually pricking up their ears for gossip. Xiaoling was irritated and cursed secretly. She was thinking about going to Pei Zion to ask for the amulet. She didn't intend to waste time and have a conflict with Xiaoyu, so she walked around her and walked forward. Even though Xiaoyu Sheng looked weak and pitiful, he was quite strong. He grabbed her wrist and said, "Xingling, apologize." Xiaoling was suddenly pulled by her, and she was angry in her heart. She was afraid that the baby would be hurt if she pulled her apart, so she did not try hard to break away from her. She only put her other hand around her belly to protect her. "Let go." "Apologize," Xiaoyu said. Xiaoling was filled with anger. If she hadn't been pregnant, she would have fought Xiaoyu for 300 rounds. But now, how dare she go too far? However, even if she didn't want to cause trouble, she wasn't someone who would swallow her anger. She obviously didn't hit anyone, so why should she apologize? She looked at Xiaoyu coldly and said nothing. The two sides are in a stalemate. The onlookers were unhappy. Why didn't these two girls fight? Or maybe taunting each other to reveal something exciting? What's going on with this stalemate here? Is it all just an inner drama? It's so unauthentic. The people were wailing in their hearts. The two girls still didn't move. However, Manager Chu on the side seemed to have heard their thoughts. He stepped forward and gently put 5 fingers on Xiaoyu's hand. "Xiaoyu, let go of Miss Yet." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 417. Chapter 417 Especially Miss Yet. Brother Chu. Seeing Chu Chen protecting Xiaoling, Xiaoyu's eyes filled with mist. Chu Chen's 5 fingers were like iron pliers, and he quietly pulled her hand from Xiaoling's arm. At the same time, he carefully protected Xiaoling and made Xiaoling stand behind him. "You have to be polite to Miss Ye," he said. Even when Xingling first came to Pei Zion, Chu Chen didn't know how to take sides, but now that she is pregnant with Pei Zion's child, if Chu Chen doesn't know how to take sides anymore, he can stop working in the emperor. Pei Zion also specifically told him to take good care of Xiaoling. It's a pity that Xiaoyu didn't know that she was pregnant. "You're just protecting an outsider like this." Xiaoyu's voice was full of grievance. "Brother Chu, when my sister was still alive, you were so kind to me. Now that my sister is gone, you join forces with others. Come to bully me." She was not stupid. She knew that Chu Chen must have been instructed by Pei Zion to do this, but she did not dare to directly criticize Pei Zion. She only dared to question Chu Chen. Chu Chen frowned. What happened to Xiaoyu? It was equivalent to accusing him of being snobbish in public. He was dissatisfied and looked coldly at the assistant, who lowered his head and dared not speak out. Are you Miss Xiaoyu's assistant? Later, go to the agency to find Lu Xinan and ask her to pick a few people who have been on location recently. Announcement, send Miss Xiaoyu over. If you can't offend her, is it not easy to send her to the location? Who told her to touch her boss's woman? The world is big and the child in Xiaoling's belly is the biggest at the moment. If the boss knows that something happened to the child, he will skin him immediately. Chu Chen had always been shrewd and calculated his gains and losses very clearly. Offending Xiaoyu was worth it in exchange for the goodwill of his boss and the future landlady, even though the future landlady didn't like him. How easy is it for him to regain the favorability of the landlady? Brother Chu, Xiaoyu raised her head in shock. Although she had noticed that Chu Chen always favored Xiaoling intentionally or unintentionally, she did not expect that he would favor Xiaoling to such an extent. For this bitch, send her far away? No, she is not willing to give in. I want to tell Brother Zion. She stamped her foot, and her stiletto heels made a crisp sound on the marble floor. I've been feeling unwell recently, and you still force me to go shoot an outdoor scene. Brother Zion will definitely seek justice for me. Yes, she said and walked towards the chairman's office. Xiaoling sighed silently and walked slowly behind her. Now that I am pregnant, I cannot run and jump as much as I used to. Although she was only over 2 months old, her belly was not yet visible, but as her body became heavier day by day, her steps became slower and slower. She walked slowly, like an old queen, through the luxurious corridors. The onlookers looked at the direction in which they were leaving one after another. They were very conflicted in their hearts. They really wanted to continue to follow behind and watch the show. However, that was the chairman's office over there. Only those who are not afraid of death would dare to continue to follow. Ah! Forget it, the scene in the corridor was worth the price anyway. The bias of Chu Da's agent was as obvious as the rumors said. It was definitely towards Ye Xinling. It seemed that it was indeed Ye Xinling. Ling's weight in the chairman's heart is even greater. Well, I will know how to deal with the differences between these two girls in the future. Those who work in the Emperor are all human beings. Even if they often cannot guess Boss Pei's thoughts, they can just follow Mr. Chu's team without any brains. Mr. Chu is simply a legend in the workplace. In all the ups and downs of the Emperor, he has never been on the wrong team once, so it would be right to imitate him without thinking. The group of people were satisfied and gradually dispersed. Xiaoyu didn't know that the conflict in the corridor had cost her both her wife and her troops. Not only was she not framed as Ye Xinling, but she had lost her halo in the eyes of the masses. From now on, in the conflict between her and Xiaoling, no one will help her without foresight. On the contrary, there will be many people on Xiaoling's side vying to be the vanguard. Xiaoling herself doesn't care about this. She walked slowly to the corridor in front of the chairman's office and bumped into Xiaoyu, who had arrived before her. Why are you here? Xiaoyu saw her with a bad look on her face. Are you here to complain to Brother Zi Hung? I advise you to give up. Brother Zi Hung is busy and has no time to care about you, Xiaoling. Does she seem so childish, looking for someone to complain to all day long? It's a good thing she didn't ask this question, otherwise, everyone must have said, it's very similar. Xiaoling still ignored her and took a few steps to go inside. But he was stopped by 2 bodyguards at the door. Sorry, Miss Ye, the chairman is receiving guests and has ordered no one to disturb him. Xiaoyu gloated, I told you that Brother Zion has no time to care about you. Xiaoling gave her a strange look. Wasn't she also blocked from outside? Is this something to be proud of? Doesn't she feel that when she mocks others, she is also mocking herself? This sister. Xiaoling sighed. Was she just so stupid to begin with, or was she really, as Feng Kun said a few days ago, becoming more and more like her in her previous life? She shook her head, no longer feeling ashamed in her heart, and said to the bodyguard, "I want to go in." The two bodyguards were polite but firm in attitude, but they refused to let him go. Chu Chen also spoke for her. "The chairman has given instructions that Miss Ye has privileges and can come to him at any time." Xia Yu on the side heard this and glanced at Xiaoling jealously, feeling as if needles pricking her heart. "Why does that have privileges? Just like it was when my sister was still alive. No matter what Brother Zion is doing, he can go in and find him without any hindrance." She originally thought that since her sister died, no one would get this privilege. Why is she not the one who gets this privilege? Xia Yu felt like a ball of jealousy was burning in her heart, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. To her relief, the two bodyguards did not let him go because of Chu Chen's words. Instead, they said, "Sorry, Mr. Chu, the chairman has specially ordered that no one is allowed in, especially Miss Ye." "Especially Miss Ye?" Xiaoling was really curious this time. What kind of distinguished guest was he who wanted to avoid her? She poked her head in and looked inside. At the end of the long corridor, there were 4 bodyguards standing in front of the door of the chairman's office. 2 of them were from Pei Zion. She often followed Pei Zion in and out, and the other 2 were. "Arno," she cried out. At the end of the corridor, a bodyguard heard the shout, turned his head and saw her, and immediately strode over. "Ms. Ye," he said respectfully, "long time no see." It turned out to be Arnold. He was Li Lei's bodyguard. For a moment, Xiaoling's heartbeat accelerated, and even her voice trembled with excitement. "He is in there." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 418. Chapter 418. It's not your call. Anyo understood who she was talking about and nodded slightly. Today the young master came to see Mr. Pei. Her instinct was to rush in. In front of the corridor, 2 emperor's bodyguards still stopped her. "Miss Ye, you can't go in." She now knew why Pei Zion wouldn't let her in. He didn't want her to see Li Lei. After that day, she missed Li Lei so much and couldn't wait to see him again. "Even one side is fine." Arnold asked, "Miss Ye, do you want to go in?" "When?" She wanted to take it for granted, but when the words came to her lips, she suddenly held back. "What were you going in for?" "See Li Lei." "So what can I do if I see him? Since we can't be together, it will only increase the sadness." She stood by the door of the corridor, taking a step back slightly. Xia Yu on the side looked at her expression, and at this moment, she was 100% sure that Ye Xingling loved someone else, and that person was in Pei Zion's office. Such a good opportunity, of course, must reveal the hypocritical face of this bitch, and let Brother Zion see with his own eyes how wanton this is. Xia Yu knew how to calculate well. He grabbed Xiaoling and rushed inside, shouting, "Why don't you apologize for pushing me? Come on, let's go find Brother Zion to judge." Xiaoling was caught off guard and pulled by her, stumbling forward. The 2 bodyguards guarding the door tried to stop him, but were easily restrained by Arnold. Arnold is a retired mercenary and has been on the battlefield with real swords and guns. He has an iron-blooded aura that cannot be compared to the bodyguards on Pei Zion's side. Pei Zion's bodyguard couldn't stop them and watched them pass through 2 checkpoints and enter the chairman's office. There are 2 men in the office. One of them was wearing a dark black hand-tailored suit, with a meticulous tie and cuffs. He was sitting on the boss's chair behind the spacious rosewood table with a gloomy look on his face. It was Pei Zion. The other man was also wearing valuable handmade clothes, with tight and well-proportioned muscles slightly exposed at the lapel. A pair of sharp eyes stared at the man opposite him, like a bloodthirsty beast. The 2 of them were arguing about something, and their swords were at war. Brother Zion, Xia Yu's soft and aggrieved voice broke the silence. Hearing the sound, they stopped talking at the same time and turned around. Xiaoling stood by the door, as if there were roots under her feet, looking at the man opposite Pei Zion quietly, almost forgetting to breathe. Li Lei, how difficult it was to see him again. Has he not rested recently? He lost weight, became haggard, lost the laziness and calmness in his bones, and became dangerous and ferocious. Like a big cat, it only shows its fangs when it needs to fight with all its strength. She felt sorry for him like this. She stood like this and looked at him for a long time. Xia Yu said something in her ear, but she couldn't hear it clearly. Pei Zion stood up, walked in front of her, and blocked her view. Why are you here? She then came back to her senses and looked at Pei Zion with some sadness. Li Lei also stood up from his seat and walked over. Xiaoling. Xiaoling is not the one you should call. Pei Zion's voice was cold and he stretched out his arms to hug Xiaoling's body. Xiaoling stiffened and wanted to break away, but held back. Since she can no longer be with Li Lei, don't give him hope, just let him mistakenly think that she is happy with Pei Zion. Do you have a problem with me? Pei Zion's voice was intimate and low. Xiaoling smiled reluctantly. Well, I asked you if you want to have dinner together at noon. Li Lei put his hands in his pockets and clenched his fists tightly. Arnold's face was not very pretty either. Miss Ye, you. Xia Yu held her breath beside her and secretly observed the expressions of several people, feeling happy in her heart. She had been with Brother Zi Hung for many years, and she knew just by feeling that he was very unhappy now. Even if she hugged Xiaoling tenderly, it was just a show in front of others. As for the queen, bitch, just wait, you will die in an ugly way. Pei Zion glanced at Li Lei lightly. You have seen that she has a very good relationship with me and she stayed with me voluntarily. Do you still want to go your own way and sacrifice your wealth and property to fight to the death with the emperor? Zhe Xia. Before Aya and his friends broke in, this was what the two men were negotiating. Although the funds in the stock market were frozen, Li Lei still had no plans to let go of the Pei family. He came to Pei Zion to issue an ultimatum, either letting Xiaoling go or fighting with the emperor. The struggle between two giant chaebols is enough to turn the business world upside down. Li Lei is not easy to mess with, and Pei Zion is not a good person, so he will not let him go at all. Seeing the negotiations reaching a deadlock, she unexpectedly broke in. Li Lei looked at her, but she lowered her head and avoided his sight. The softest place in his heart throbbed with pain, and he said softly, "You don't have to lie to me. When you were happy, you were not like this now. Xiaoling, wait until I save you." She was dark and pale, and shook her head with all her strength. Want to tell him that she was very happy, but could not say anything. Pei Zion's face was as dark as water, and he held her hand slightly hard, causing her pain. She bit her lip to keep from screaming, and was led by him towards the door step by step. Behind him, there was a burning gaze that was always fixed on him. When he arrived at another lounge, Pei Zion sat Xiaoling down on the sofa, took off his finely crafted suit jacket and put it on her body, frowning, "Don't run around if you have nothing to do. You are pregnant now. Pay attention to your identity." The last few words have a strong warning meaning. Xiaoling knew in her heart that it was the way she looked at Li Lei that made him angry, but she didn't have the extra energy to defend herself. She just asked, "Are the emperor and Tianyi going to fight?" Pei Zion looked at her and said, "That's none of your business." She was worried in her heart. Although she didn't know how powerful the two men were, she also understood that Pei Zion's temperament would definitely lead to revenge, while Li Lei would definitely fight to the death. Xiaoling didn't want them to fight tooth and nail for her. After thinking for a moment, she said, "Let me persuade Li Lei." "You want to see him?" Pei Zion's eyes narrowed dangerously. She felt a shiver in her heart. She neither nodded nor shook her head. She was stunned on the spot. Pei Zion said, Xiaoling, just stay here and stay here. If you run around again, believe it or not, I will stop you." Her acting skills were so bad that even an idiot could tell that she was paying attention to Li Lei. Why? Can they meet again? Pei Ziyan was very angry and planned to call Chu Chen in later to scold him. He couldn't stand how he was doing things. Xiaoling was quiet for a while. "I don't want to see you fight." "Pei Ziyan, it's not me who wants to fight him now, it's him who is using all his strength to attack me. Don't worry, even if that happens, the emperor will not fall. You can all give up on this idea." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 419. Chapter 419. Ridiculous. The emperor will never fall, but if Li Lei really wants to destroy everything, no one will have an easy time. Nowadays, Tianyi is on a par with the emperor, and no one can defeat the other. If they insist on fighting, it will be two tigers fighting, both sides will lose, and it will end tragically. Pei Ziyan had already made plans to damage his vitality for 30 years, but even then he would not let go of Xiaoling. Xiaoling was originally his, so why did Li Lei fight for his love? Looking at her worried look, he softened his voice and said, "You can raise your baby with peace of mind. I will give you whatever you want." What more could she want? She was a little forlorn. "Pei Ziyan, I want that amulet, will you give it to me?" His expression suddenly turned gloomy. After all, she still couldn't let go of Li Lei. For a moment, he wanted to rush forward, tear her apart, and take out her heart to see what color it was. Why is he so kind to her, but she is never satisfied and always thinks about Li Lei and Li Lei. Amulet, he smiled grimly, called Chu Chen and asked him to deliver an inconspicuous small box. Opening the box, the amulet of sycamore wood lay quietly, dimmed. Xiaoling is going to get it? Pei Ziyan blocked her hand and took the amulet in his hand before her. "Don't you always want it? I'll tell you now, you will never get it." He walked to the window, raised his hand, and threw the amulet out. She turned pale and rushed to the window. However, the woods outside the window were silent, and she didn't know where the amulet fell. She didn't have time to say anything to Pei Ziyan, so she turned around and walked downstairs. Pei Ziyan stopped her and said, "Just be patient." "Let go." She was extremely angry and pushed him desperately, but his body was as heavy as a mountain, motionless. Xiaoling raised her head to look at him. "Let me find that amulet." He pursed his lips tightly and still didn't let go. Xiaoling continued to push and hit him. She was so excited that she used too much force. Suddenly, she felt a pain in her lower abdomen. She was caught off guard, cried out in pain, and bent over, holding her abdomen. Xiaoling, Pei Ziyan's expression changed, and he helped her sit down on the small sofa beside her, half kneeling down. "How are you? What's wrong with you?" She was so painful that cold sweat broke out on her forehead. It took her a while to recover, and she was also frightened. "Children, will the children be okay?" While she was worried about her child, she was also worried about the amulet that was thrown outside the building. She endured the pain and said in a trembling voice, "I want that amulet." "How long has it been and you are still thinking about that broken piece of wood?" Pei Ziyan said angrily. "Let's go, I'll take you to the doctor." He bent down, picked her up from the sofa, and walked downstairs. Xiaoling struggled weakly. "Amulet." Her weak appearance made Pei Ziyan reluctant to say a harsh word. No matter what, nothing would happen to the baby in her belly. He frowned and said to her patiently, "You ignored Li Lei today. You must have understood that long-term pain is worse than short-term pain. Since you have made up your mind to end things with him, Why do you still keep the old things? This is her, the woman he loves deeply. If it had been another woman who was in Cao's camp and her heart was in Han, he would have already let her know the 180 ways to write the word death. But for her, he couldn't bear to hit or scold her, so he had no choice but to do so. Xiaoling's hands were protecting her abdomen. She still wanted to find the amulet and leave a thought for herself and her future children. She watched him carry her down to the first floor, and walk towards the Rolls-Royce, getting further and further away from the grove, amidst the looks of surprise, gossip, envy, and hatred from the people coming and going. She was so anxious that sweat appeared on her forehead, and her lower abdomen began to hurt again. "Give me the amulet," she said with difficulty, and suddenly felt happy in her heart. "This amulet was made for me by my brother, to keep me safe. It hurts." She looked wrong, and her thin white fingers tightly grasped his expensive shirt. Tossing and turning. Pei Ziyan paused slightly. "Your brother?" "Well." She became more and more difficult to speak. "I beg you, but my brother made it with his own hands. It can keep me safe and healthy. My brother is a national master, the things he makes are very effective." She said a few words. I had to take a breath and finally express my meaning intermittently. Pei Ziyan didn't believe in this at first. What kind of national teacher and what kind of efficaciousness? He always thought it was a trick of charlatans. However, a few days ago, for Xiaoling's sake, he went to check on Xia Moyan, who was respected as the national master. Although he has not been found, he found a lot of rumors about many prominent high-ranking families and even political figures. They don't dare to offend him. When encountering 3 disasters and 5 disasters, they want to dig deep into the ground to find him and find solutions. I would rather believe that it exists. He looked down at the woman in his arms and saw that she was in pain and had a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. He was afraid that she was thinking that the amulet was bad for her health and would harm the child in her belly. He was also afraid that the amulet was really effective. After thinking for a while, he said, "I'll ask someone to find it. Don't worry, follow me to the hospital first, don't hurt the child. I'll tell you as soon as the amulet is found." Xiaoling felt slightly relieved and relaxed, feeling that the pain in her lower abdomen was not that severe anymore. Pei Ziyan sent her to Huaxin Specialist Hospital and saw Mr. Zhang as usual. Mr. Zhang carefully examined her and said, "It's nothing serious. It's just that the fetus is unstable due to emotional ups and downs. Just stay calm and calm," he said. After that, I prescribed some anti-fetus medicines. Pei Ziyan felt relieved and accompanied Xiaoling home and took anti-fetal medicine. Xiaoling took a breath and thought about the amulet again. "Have you found it?" Pei Ziyan could hardly control the anger in his heart, but when he thought of the doctor's words, he did not dare to provoke her. He could only hold back his displeasure and said, "Found it?" Xiaoling wanted to see it, so he took it out and showed it to her. "Can you give it back to me?" She looked at him carefully. "Otherwise I will be uneasy. They say that you can use the emperor to control the princes, but now she is relying on the baby in her belly to challenge his limits step by step." Pei Ziyan felt that he had almost no limits in front of her. He was silent for a moment and said, "Okay." He handed the amulet back to her. She felt like she had found a treasure, something precious and important hanging around her neck. Pei Ziyan looked at her expression of joy and peace after being found again, and felt sour and bitter in his heart. In this life, he has been a powerful man and has never lost to anyone in anything. But now, he is not sure. In Xiaoling's heart, he has clearly lost to another man. His hands clenched and unclenched out of her sight. It is really ridiculous that his child, who is obviously his woman, wants to use the amulet that Li Lei asked for to be conceived. There was a power outage at home at night. I was so miserable that I carried my computer to Starbucks. I couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi there for some reason. The 2 store clerks tried for a long time but couldn't save me. I burst into tears, so I quietly rolled back, and the power supply to my home has not been restored until now. Everyone has been waiting for a long time. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 420. Chapter 420. Who is the mad dog? Xiaoling felt peaceful after getting the amulet. She didn't dare to hang it around her neck for fear of irritating Pei Xian, so she kept it safely in the small handbag she carried with her. I took it out and looked at it in my spare time, and recalled the short and beautiful time with Li Lei alone, and I felt that I had the courage to persevere on the long and lonely road of life in the future. Pei Xian is very busy, leaving early and coming back late. He often doesn't come home until she has gone to bed. When she wakes up, he has already left the house. Occasionally when we meet in the company, he also looks like he is busy with everything. Originally, she should be grateful for this situation. Not meeting each other can avoid a lot of harm. But, she knew what he was busy with. Recently, the business war between Emperor and Tianyi has been raging. The two companies are tit for tat on almost every project, refusing to give in. The war has spread to the entire business world, and the stock market has been turned upside down, like a roller coaster ride. She was very worried, fearing that Li Lei would lose to Pei Xian and put all his career into it. He was worried about Pei Xian again. What would he do if the emperor really collapsed? In an instant, he secretly cursed himself for worrying for nothing. Pei Xian was so tyrannical, how could he collapse? Besides, even if he collapsed, wouldn't he just take advantage of her wish and allow her to return to Li Lei with the baby in her belly? She cannot understand business wars and can only make general guesses from the daily news, and her emotions are ups and downs. Perhaps due to the influence of mood, the fetal image is a little unstable. On this day, Mr. Zhang did a routine checkup for her and said, "You have to relax and stay in a good mood, otherwise you and your child will not be able to survive it." Xiaoling nodded. She couldn't help much with matters in the mall. There was no practical meaning other than being anxious. Reason told her that raising the baby with peace of mind was the right thing to do. It was related to the health of the baby and should not be taken lightly. She forced herself to shift her attention. 2 lifetimes apart, for her, she can only be most immersed in singing. So, she often went to record songs and receive some light announcements to keep herself busy without adding too much physical burden. Chu Chen contacted various departments of the emperor and made great efforts to promote her, giving her the best schedule and resources. Coupled with her past popularity, her popularity soared rapidly. Chu Chen accompanied her to the TV station to do interviews with celebrities. Entering the door of the TV station, along the way, she noticed that many people coming and going looked at her with strange eyes, with secret excitement and hesitation to speak. Xiaoling felt uncomfortable and asked Chu Chen, "Why do they look at me like this?" Chu Chen replied calmly and respectfully, "It's probably because you haven't been out and about much recently, and everyone is a little surprised." She always felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't explain it. People often say that one pregnancy makes one stupid for 3 years. She started to be stupid from the time she was pregnant. She soon forgot about things she couldn't figure out. Enter the recording studio. Chu Chen confirmed to the host with a serious face, "The list of questions for the interview has not been changed. Do you understand which questions should be asked and which should not be asked?" The famous host glanced at Xiaoling before replying to Chu Chen, "Of course, I am not a paparazzi, and our show is not a gossip channel. Agent Chu, don't worry, this is a professional ethics, I still have it." The situation seemed a little strange. Xiaoling looked at Chu Chen doubtfully. Chu Chen still smiled calmly and said to her, "It's just a routine confirmation." Xiaoling thinks about it. Wasn't this how she recorded programs in her previous life? When did Chu Chen not put on a show of arrogance and pick on his collaborators 1,800 times? The entertainment industry has always been like this. People who are famous have a lot of arrogance. When they are not popular, many celebrities want all the media to come and inquire about them. After they become famous, they become more reserved and do not want to pay attention to many questions at all. Chu Chen has always known how to handle things appropriately for her. Although, he seemed a little unusually serious today. Xiaoling shook her head. She was pregnant again. She stopped thinking about it and started the interview with the host. The recording of the program went smoothly and it was over in less than an hour. Call it a day. At this time, Chu Chen finally relaxed a little and led his assistants, makeup artists, and bodyguards to her out. The moment he walked out of the TV station, a group of reporters surrounded him, and it was very lively. Ms. Yeah, what do you think about the business war between the Emperor and Tianyi? Do you know that Li Lei and Pei Xian started the war because of you? I heard that Li Lei said that he would fight to the death with the Emperor, is it true? Ms. Yeah, I heard that you had an improper relationship with Tianyi's boss Li, and you became famous by sleeping with him. But later, the Emperor's boss Pei offered a higher price, so you switched to boss Pei's arms. Is this happening? Life is noisy and full of excitement. Xiaoling was completely stunned. She was stunned for a few seconds before she realized why Chu Chen acted like he was facing an enemy just before recording the program. I bet he already knew these unfavorable rumors from the outside world. Tough questions came to her one after another. Fortunately, she has been a star for 2 lifetimes. What kind of big scene has she not seen? At this time, he tightly closed his mouth without saying a word. Under the of bodyguards and others, he quickly passed through the crowd and got into the car. In the car, the assistant let out a sigh of relief. Thank God, this car is not a Rolls-Royce. On weekdays, when Xiaoling goes in and out of the Emperor, she always rides in Pei Xian's Rolls-Royce. When she goes out, because of the large number of people, she often uses a special nanny car. Chu Chen glared at the assistant. Xiaoling finally regained her thoughts at this time. What's going on? How could it be spread like this outside? She knew about the war between the Emperor and Tianyi, and the cause was indeed because of her, but who spread the cause? Chu Chen lowered his eyebrows and said, Li Lei pounced on the Emperor out of nowhere and bit the Emperor like a mad dog. Naturally, the outside world speculated on the reason. There are all kinds of versions. But the public likes to watch gossip. You and the 2 elders, the love triangle involving the boss's love is their favorite version. Xiaoling ignored the second half of his sentence. All her anger was focused on the words like a mad dog in his mouth. Who are you calling a mad dog? She scolded coldly. Chu Chen's expression was very indifferent. Whoever wants to bring down the Emperor is a mad dog. He is the Emperor's man, and his fortune and future are all on the boat of Pei Xian. Now the situation is turbulent, and he is also facing an unprecedented situation. Crisis. Naturally he doesn't like Li Lei. Xiaoling's chest heaved with anger. Chu Chen, do you really have the nerve to call others a dog? I think you are a dog yourself. Pei Xian's lackey. You must be wronged by being my manager. Since you are old, you're contradicting me. Why don't you go back and lick Pei Xian? A dog like you should just become your master's secret servant. End of this chapter.